This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
Hi, this is Joe Rabil. So I want to talk about trading with the trend. And the question is, do you find yourself buying too early when you're trying to enter, or are you too late? All right. And I'm going to show you graphically how I can kind of identify where the sweet spot is. Okay. So we're going to go through that. Now, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, I would suggest clicking the link in the description to find out more about the book. Also, if you do enjoy this content, it really helps the channel if you can hit that like button and also subscribe.
Okay, the first stock I have is AEP, American Electric Power. Utilities sometimes can really be nice trading stocks, especially if you're just looking for swing trades on either a daily chart or a weekly. But I want to show this weekly chart. I'm going to expand this. And I want you to see at the bottom of the screen, what I've done is I've created an indicator that essentially does and shows when a stock on this time frame is trading in an uptrend, a downtrend, or neutral. All right. Obviously, red would be when you're in a downtrend. Green is when you're in an uptrend, and then yellow is when you're neutral. Now, I wanted to show this when we see this green, and we can see it happens in right in early June. Right, and we start to move sideways. This is in 2024, and it starts to move, and we can see that we're in a trend here. We've got a pullback to the moving averages. All right. So this is really essentially, I mean, to keep it down to brass tacks, simple as can be, is we're looking for a trend in place, and then we're looking for a pullback in that trend. All right. Now, when we get that trend, we want to go to the lower time frame to identify where we're getting a reversal. Now, when you look at this, this comes in all, and I've got it on all four time frames, and I've already scrolled back on this pullback in 624. You can see we're in that same time space for 2024 as well. We're getting the pullback, so we get this pullback on this time frame, and then you can see we get a pullback on this time frame. It is the same pullback. Okay, so we're now trying to identify on this time frame where we want to enter. Okay, now what I try and do on this time frame is reduce my risk and improve my timing. Right now, we can gauge the strength of the decline and the pullback based on the indicators using the MACD and the ADX. As long as the ADX is not showing much in terms of strength, where we don't have red DI causing the ADX to really move, we have a bias to the upside still. All right, and that definitely happened here. We didn't show any real strength in the sellers whatsoever. You can see the red DI never even poked above the 25 period as this continued to drop. So we're trying to rely, and we're looking at this trend indicator, and we can see that we're in an uptrend before the pullback, and then during the pullback we turn yellow, meaning we're in this neutral camp, and then we have this period where we actually turn negative. All right, I think this is pretty important. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but there are periods where it'll actually shift to the downside. And when that happens, we want to really be alert, because this is where there's a pretty good chance we're going to start to see some kind of a signal back to the upside if we're going to get a trigger. All right. Now, what's important to me is that I don't really want to play to the left side of this negative signal. All right. Or if we're looking at it from a bell-shaped curve, right? I'm trying to play the left side. I'm trying to avoid the left side of this turn. All right. We don't want to be early in this situation. If you play on the way down as this is pulling back and you're putting in your orders, the likelihood is you're going to get stopped out a lot more. All right. What I'm trying to do is avoid the left side of the turn. Avoid the left side of the turn. Remember that. All right. Once we get to the point where it's turned negative, it's either going to be negative and it's going to go down, right? Or it's going to turn to the upside and flip back to the upside. Now that's before it turns positive. Remember, in order to turn this thing positive, we need to have the 18 cross above the 40 and both lines rising and everything. That's a late signal. I'm not really interested in waiting for that majority of the time. I'm not looking for that kind of match. What I'm looking for is a sign, the earliest sign, that things are shifting back to the upside and getting back in line with what's taking place on the higher time frame. All right. In order to do that, we need to see this actually go from negative to neutral. Now, it won't all, again, as I said, it won't always turn negative. It might just stay neutral. You have to take a hard look at this and watch the pattern. If it goes in the pattern and comes out, then we need to turn to the upside. But the 40 could be still rising throughout, and that might keep this from turning negative. All right. So we have to make sure all of this is covered in my courses, in my book. Now, I go into a lot more detail in the courses, but you can get an understanding of what we're looking for in terms of the trends, in terms of how to get what this match, right? This is the lower time frame with the higher time frame. This is really what we're looking for, is this opposing trend pattern, and then we look for the shift. If you notice, the shift actually in the signal actually came in with the big green bar. All right, big green bar is typically what we're looking for in a lot of cases to be the signal that it's time to go. All right, let's take a look at another one. This is American Express. I'm going to bring this up to date. So you can see what happened here. I actually talked about this in a previous video where we had this pullback. You can see it had turned green again. We were in an uptrend, and then we get a pullback. All right. Now the pullback on this time frame is this ABC to the downside. Again, there's some overrun in the MACD. The red pops up, but it doesn't cause the ADX to cross above 25. So I'm okay with what's taking place here. In fact, this was a trade I actually did. And so we get this situation where we go inside the zone and go sideways. And if you notice what happened, we had a move to the downside that caused this to turn red again. All right. Now, again, I don't want to play the left side of this move, which means if the moving average is crossing to the downside and it's just starting, I'm looking for more evidence, especially if there's overrun. If there's overrun, I do not want to play to the. I don't want to enter to the left side of this. Okay, I'm trying to avoid that. Get to the right side of the turn. Play the right side of the turn, and I think you have a lot more success. So we get this to start to turn to the upside and then flatten out. And again, then we get our big green bar kicking in, and that's still a part of the neutral pattern. It has not shifted to the upside. So to me, that's really the sweet spot where we haven't turned positive yet. I mean, I'm not chasing it way up here. Okay, but I'm not getting in so early that I have this chance of getting increasing chance of being stopped out. So avoid this, and you can play anywhere in this range is really where you're looking to enter. Sometimes you can be early, sometimes you can be quicker just based on the way things play out. In this situation, it really just went sideways. It didn't form any kind of pattern, and it was testing the 18 by going sideways rather than going down. All right, so we have that pattern. Now let me give you one more example, which is this TAP. Now, this is a negative version, and it just happened recently. Now, these consumer staples have had a real struggle here, but you can see we have the exact opposite pattern. Downward shift in the moving averages. We get a rally to the upside. Now, look at how this would give you plenty of time to recognize the trend. Now, you don't have to have this at the bottom of your chart. I mean, it's nice to look at it and be able to quickly see, but you should be able to see this pattern, these moving averages moving like that. It's simple, right? I mean, and then we're waiting for this. You can actually see the ABC on this time frame. You can see it a lot clearer on the daily chart, right? And then we're looking for, we go and we see what's going on here. Now, we had overrun on this time frame, but look, we had no strength in the buyers to get this to cross above 25. All right. Now, if we go to the bottom here again, look at what happened. We had the same pattern where we go neutral, then we have actually turn positive, then we go back to neutral. So where are you looking to enter? I mean, if you're looking at this, you're trying to enter somewhere in this range here between negative and positive. All right, let me erase all this so you can see. Somewhere between here and here, we're trying to enter somewhere in this range, right? To the right side of this and the left side of this, all right? We don't want to be too late. We don't want to be too early. And I think if you think about it in these terms, try and avoid the left side of the turn, right? The left side of the turn. When you have moving, if you have, look, if you're entering a short and your two moving averages are rising, so if I get short because you got a little reversal here, but the two moving averages are rising, I'm really asking for it. Now, in this case, it would have worked for you, and you would have thought you were a genius, and you shorted it right off the high. But I would say, a lot of times, I don't know what the number would be. There would be a lot of times where you end up getting stopped out of this, and you'd say, this system doesn't work. This approach doesn't work. But if you play to the right side of the turn, and make sure that you're focusing on that. Now we cross through the moving averages. Now all of a sudden this 18's turning. Now this is very similar to what AXP did. You notice how it went sideways in this pattern. It didn't really give you a setup like a move down and a rally back up, right? It was more of a sideways consolidation. And then we actually got kind of a break below the low of that here. And that was really the signal while it was still neutral before it turned negative, okay? So, you had the cross of both moving averages after being above, right? You had the setup, and you could have done it anywhere as this crossed back below to the downside. Anywhere you could have done it really on this bar right here, or you could have waited for a little bit of confirmation coming out of this little sideways move. But to me, anywhere in here is the sweet spot of the turn because it's right after where things are starting to shift to the downside. So I hope this graphically gives you a very good idea of what we're trying to accomplish when we're entering using a 2 time frame approach. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.